Welcome to the 100th Monkey Radio with Tom and LOT. And, normally I introduce this show with Tom and the Monkey Crew, but Greg, which was the third spoke of the wheel here, he actually decided that he's got to kind of pay attention to more family matters right now, and that the show was a little bit more than he was ready to handle at this time. He will be popping in from time to time and joining us once in a while on shows, and same way that Ramon's still working with us once in a while. He's not gone, and he's definitely still a very close friend to both Ellis and I. Anyways, we are recording this on September 17th of 2015, and, I've mentioned this a couple times on a couple shows about my new hobby. So I've gotten into remote control airplanes, and I happen to pick up a monster.
Big one.
This thing is, Craigslist is a wonderful thing. For those of you that aren't here in the U.S. or maybe Craigslist is worldwide, I don't know. I think it's just U.S., but I could be very wrong there. But Craigslist is a little, if you want to sell something, you post it on Craigslist. It's a free website that allows people to sell stuff locally from their local area. And anyways, I found this plane on Craigslist, and this thing is a beast. So
huge. It's huge. I thought he was going to put his dog in it. Fly his dog around.
Yeah. So anyways, I just had to throw that out there because it is a monster, and I can't believe that they allow RC planes this big. It's about a 7-foot wingspan.
Yeah.
And it's got this big ass 2-stroke motor on it.
Loud.
Yeah, it's loud.
Extremely loud.
I am having such a blast doing this stuff, guys. I've been having an actual hobby. I don't think I don't think there's ever been a time in my life where I really had an actual hobby that I actually did something like this. So I'm really enjoying it, and it's given me something to fill up my empty spare time in.
Yeah, and it's good for everybody to have some sort of hobby, something that, can take their mind off the mundane.
Right.
So
I for years and years and years and years and years, whenever I had free time, I jumped into the books, started researching, reading, and it was all about consciousness and spirituality. And since I started getting into this hobby, I felt kind of like a weight has lifted. And, I was getting too serious with this stuff, and this consciousness, this whole life thing isn't meant to be serious all the time. We're supposed to be having fun.
And whatever any ways that, that we use to release that, and just it's almost like having a hobby, or especially for you, your hobby is like, you're flying these planes, but at the same time you're in some sort of state of meditation,
right.
Of stillness, of calmness, of peace.
Yeah.
So it's, you can look at it as, flying RC planes is spiritual.
Yeah, there you go.
It is.
All right. Okay, yeah. Let's start our own Church of the Remote Control.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Well, I've read tarot cards for, almost 30 years now, and one of the biggest questions, the most common questions people ask me is, what is my life purpose? What am I here for?
Huge question.
I mean, and it's a very valid question for everybody here, especially if they haven't figured it out.
Yeah.
If they haven't found a balanced spot to walk their path in.
Yeah, and not only if they haven't figured it out, but what if they just think they'd figured it out, but it's not actually their purpose? How do you get that true knowing?
Exactly.
How many people do we know that are successful?
I know what my purpose is, but I keep hitting walls, and I keep getting beat down, and I keep just running into misery and not really enjoying what my purpose is.
Yeah.
That might not be.
Might need to look somewhere else. But that brings us to our guest today.
Absolutely. We have a special guest with us. We've got Rhys Thomas with us tonight.
Yay!
Rhys Thomas is a visionary author, speaker, trainer, and coach in the personal growth and energy medicine field. He's the founder of the Rhys Thomas Institute of Energy Medicine and the creator of the Rhys Method, a powerful system of self-discovery, transformation, and healing. The Rhys Method is taught exclusively at the Rhys Thomas Institute of Energy Medicine through the Rhys Thomas Coaching Programs and through his products and online programs. Rhys's greatest inner gift is the ability to awaken you to your deepest inner knowing of who you were born to be and what you are here to do to inspire others. He gives a step-by-step guidance in how to let go of sabotage through confusion and playing small. The results of this work give a powerful ability to make choices in your business branding, who you choose to be in relationship with, how to call to you that which you truly desire and not that which you don't in areas of personal health and well-being, both physically and spiritually. He has impacted the lives of thousands of people through his videos, speaking events, and programs. By mastering the art of energy medicine into the science of personal empowerment, business and health for the last 40 years, Rhys stands as a model for what he teaches. Throughout his career as a tennis professional, coach, business owner, author, husband, father, public speaker, martial artist, healer, and soul reader, he discovered that people who change the world have in common. He discovered what people. Oh, geez, I'm screwing this all up.
Yeah. You can read it on the website. It's all there.
I don't know why my hands is so damn tight. But his website is www.rhysmethod.com, and it is posted in the info section of this show you are listening to. And welcome to the 100th Monkey Radio, Rhys. Man, did I slaughter that bio.
You started off real good.
I did. Yeah, I think that was a big one. That was a big one. I think there's just like a three-liner in there somewhere.
Yeah, I should have.
I'm glad to be here, Tom and LFE. I love it. You guys are fun, and I loved your talk about the plane, because the biggest, the most energy you have comes from your child archetype. And when we become adults, we've sort of made a vow to not have that energy, because we're adults now. And when you remember it again, it's like, wow, where did all this go? And that's, so a big part of our life purpose is to have all of us. And if you spend a lot of time trying to be a good adult and have a good job and learn spirituality and be on top of things and all that, and then you realize, God, the only thing I really want to do is play. Well, that's a reawakening of that energy that actually makes life fun. And then it makes when you got a great hobby like that, or what I do at school is we help people remember that if you're not playing in life, you're missing that's the key energy, the energy of the child. The child energy has all the energy, and then the adult has got to make some tough choices. But if you come with the energy, the choice is easy. If you come without the energy, the choice is always just a sort of like one more frustrating thing you have to figure out in your head. And the child already knows. It's like, I like chocolate, I don't like strawberry, and it goes.
Right. Well, speaking of the child, we kind of like to get an idea of where our guests come from, and one of the key questions that I like to ask is, because most people don't start their life off and know as they're growing up that they're going to be working within the spiritual or self-help or consciousness fields in any way, shape, or form when they're going through their early years. There's typically some event or something that happens that turns their feet in that direction. Was there something for you there? And where do you hail from?
I grew up in the Boston area, and I was just a normal dreamer. I was a kid out there in the woods, climbing trees and fishing and all that sort of stuff, and having, a lot of fun, love to play games, always loved sports, and, was dyslexic, so I was more into the physical things than the school things. So I didn't learn how to learn wrong as the way we teach kids how to learn teaches them how to sort of negate the natural thinking process, the natural body process of thinking, and put it all in the head. So, and of course I also had two teacher parents, and I grew up in Boston area, trying to be a good student, but really knowing I was never going to be a good student because I kind of didn't see things that way. And you're saying like, well, nobody really knows they're going to be doing spiritual work. And as a matter of fact, if you're likely to do spiritual work, you probably were having dreams as a child, or sort of awarenesses as a child that that other kids weren't having. And that's early on. That's one of the areas that you would have shut down and said, like, yeah, I can't be telling my friends about that kind of stuff. Or you tried, like for me, I had some recurring, for 12 years, I had recurring dreams, very specific recurring dreams that I was having. My parents would always say, come on, you're just go back to bed. What's the matter with you? But now later on, I know that those were, very important. That's like a calling, when you're getting a calling, and I was being trained at that level, but you don't access that till you really try to be somebody that you aren't. And that's what happened to me. I decided that I wasn't going to be that dreamer that had all these ideas and things. I was going to be a guy that does it right and is successful. And so I became, a top competitive tennis player in New England and nationally. And then I played some pro tennis, and then I got into martial arts, and I started, and always ran my own businesses and summer tennis camps, and worked for country clubs that were, as an independent contractor. And I always ran, big programs with lots of people. And I thought that's it. And I started my own corporation with a sports product. And, I was thinking that's what a guy does. Boy, and I was successful at many, many levels, except for the fact that I never felt like people really understood me. I would say things, I would do things, and I was like the only one saying those things. and I was having issues in my marriage, my relationship, I wasn't connecting that well with my children. I was a workaholic. I was doing all sorts of things, and my body was, even though I was playing tennis, 30, 40 hours a week, and martial arts the rest of the time, and working out and everything, I still had chronic physical pain and issues in my body that I had no idea was the reflection of the fact that I had no idea who I was, even though I had done Wayne Dyer's work and then Tony Robbins, and I had seen the Carolyn Mace work, and I'd done a lot of things. I thought, hey, I'm on top of things. I had really studied in some of the esoteric work and quantum physics, and I knew it all. And now I know that when I say, how many people in here know themselves, somebody invariably raises their hand and go, I know who I am. That's the person that knows the least about who they are. And so it's sort of like I was so sure of who I was, and then I got involved with energy medicine to try to heal my physical issues. And I found out that energy medicine isn't about technique. It's about the realization that the pain in your life is that you don't know who you are. And your physical, the physical pain you have is just a result of this sort of self-projection and trying to be somebody that we aren't, because it's who we think we should be.
Okay, guys, we took a quick hiatus there to change the connection. We are now connected via Skype, and I think our audio quality may be a little bit better. Okay, so Rhys, you realized that through energy medicine, through that media, that you realized that finding your life purpose has to do with really figuring out that you did, number one, that you really didn't know what the hell was going on in your life in the first place, and that it was all about knowing yourself.
Yeah, and learning that, and I, there's a lot of there's a ton of modalities out there in the world right now, literally hundreds of that. We've searched the world wide for these amazing healing techniques that people are bringing from every area corner of the earth is bringing in amazing healing techniques, and they're being called energy medicine, which they are. And and when I learned energy medicine, there were powerful full spectrum techniques that we learned. But what really stood out for me was that the work we did, the people that became healers, and the people that became good energy technique technicians, the healers were making permanent change in people, and the technicians were relieving chronic or acute pain for short periods of time. And I was like, what's the difference? Because I would go to a person that I really considered a healer, and they'd work on something, and if I went back, one of them, an older gentleman who was just an amazing healer that worked in Medford, Massachusetts. I said, I rarely ever feel like I come back here, once or twice on a problem, and it's pretty much I'm on to something else. If I come back, I come back with something different. He says, yeah. If I had to do, the same thing with somebody more than 3 times, I would get so bored. But what he's actually doing is he's using technique to relieve the acute pain. But what he's actually doing is he's modeling what it's like to live in a state of living your purpose. And when you have a healing session of any kind, and your body's sort of in that open state, and then you're in the presence of somebody who has remembered who they are at a deep level and is very comfortable with just being a human being. That is a place that allows you to also remember, oh yeah, it's okay to be me as well. So, my favorite healer is Martin Luther King, and I don't think he put anybody on the healing table, but he stood in front of people and said, having, the integrity of the human life is more important than anything else, and he embodied it in such a way that people could really hear it on both sides of the fence.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're sitting here looking at your book. I haven't got your book too much. I haven't read through your book too much. But we looked at some of your YouTube videos, and I watched almost a 2-hour-long talk you gave. And I got to tell you that talk, and you went through, and you brought these people up on stage, and you went through the different life purpose profiles.
Yeah.
And I would kind of like for you to tell us what these 5 life profiles are, and also man, it was just so. I was watching it, and everyone that you brought up on stage, from the first one was the creative. What was it?
Creative idealist.
Creative idealist. Yeah, and I was like, oh well, that sounds like me. And the second one sounds like me, and the third one sounds like me, and the fourth one, and then you get to the 5th one, and I'll let you kind of get into it. But I was like, okay, now we're making a little bit more sense. But could you go over the 5 different profiles?
Sure. And I remember, I get to the 5th one, and I say, if you think you're all the other ones but not this one, you're this one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the basic, my book is called Discover Your Purpose, How to Use the 5 Life Purpose Profiles to Unlock Your Hidden Potential and Live the Life You Were Meant to Live. And the 5 Life Purpose Profiles are something that I got from, I took a brilliant idea of Alexander Lowen and Wilhelm Reich that Alexander Lowen created, took their work that they did together back in the 30s, and he made it into bioenergetics, where they understood that the body, soul, and psyche all were one thing. And they thought Freud was crazy trying to just run the body from the mind. It just doesn't, they knew it never would work that way. We've been trying to do that ever since. but they really had the idea. And what they found was that they actually had 6, but there were 5 primary ways that people go crazy, and they were working with people in sanitariums. But they also noticed that these people went crazy in very specific ways and had very specific body types, and what they called energetic armoring, where the energy would get stuck in their body and be very tight. And so they studied that for 40, 50 years, and as they did it became a healing modality called bioenergetics, and they learned how to release those blocks for people. And I learned it as in healing school. I went to a 4-year healer training school, which I now run one. But I learned that there are these, when we all have some of these tendencies to go into what they call defense, where we armor ourselves against the world, and we go into our very minimal resourceful state, or less resourceful state, and it causes illness, or causes emotional or psychological issues in our lives. So and I was like, God, that's just because I'm kind of playful, and I like to make things alive rather than a problem. And I thought, well, there's got to be something good about these things other than just knowing that when I'm like this, I'm in this this state, and this is how you heal that, or this is where the problem is. And so I started thinking and realizing that they were dealing with what they called the five that they were dealing with in sanitariums were the schizoid, the oral, the masochist, the rigid, and the psychopath. And I was like, oh yeah, I don't want to be any of those. Yeah, but I went to school, and I was a schizoid rigid. I thought I was actually a rigid schizoid, and I was thinking, yeah, I want to go tell my friends that's for sure. I definitely want to, that's a cool thing to be. And I was like, God, I don't want to be that. And then I was thinking, well, there's got to be, if this is a soul, if rather than what they believed, which was your wounding in your life causes these problems in your life, which then you just harden into your energy body. I was looking at it, and I started testing it through people, and I did a lot of energy work and healing work and lectures, and I love using crystal bowls, which allow people also to feel things that they can't normally feel when their brain's engaged. And I started noticing that these 5 qualities weren't things that were caused by wounding. The wounding was caused by the 5 qualities, and each of the 5 qualities you're born with, you come in with, you have the genetics, you choose your parents, they don't choose you. You choose that this is how you're going to operate in the world. And of course, each one of them has very specific ways that they are challenged in life to strengthen themselves. And what I found was that underlying those crazy ideas was there are creative people, there are soft, gentle, emotional, touchy people, there are caring, loving, warm, caretaking people that'll always be there for you and are strong and will always be there for you whenever and caretake in every possible way. There are the super achievers that always have lots of letters behind their name and are successful at whatever they do usually. And then there are charismatic leaders that they're leaders in the world. And leaders can lead. If you're a leader, you will either lead in the light or the dark, and it won't matter. You don't have an in between, and you're either totally for everyone and like a Martin Luther King out there, or you can be a little bit of a Hitler. And leaders are going to lead no matter what's going on. And so we know that there are, and we know that when we see these people, people as I described these five kinds of people, people like that. So people that are creative people, right? They're very artistic, or they tend to be tall and thin, and their eyes are always looking up in the sky a little bit. They're never really paying attention to what you're saying. If you've got one as a child, they're always like, what? Huh? What? And they're not yeah. They're not what they call, I mean, your people understand. They're not in their body. And they will tend to, have a lot of anxiety when they're in their defense. They'll be anxious and worried, and they don't feel safe, and they don't necessarily, they're definitely the ones that if they could get Scotty to beam them up, they would. And they really spend a lot of time, and they love spirituality and love art and writing and poetry and those sorts of things. But they're the creative people. And so we know people like that, and that person can't just become the tough martial arts leader, or warrior all of a sudden. They just can't. They're just not wired that way. And then the next one is on the spectrum are what we call the emotional intelligence. They're the soft, loving people, and they have the most sensitive bodies. And you look at their body, whereas the creative people tend to be kind of wiry. These people have very soft, gentle, soft hands, soft. They don't have a lot of muscle definition. But they're yoga people. They're natural. When they work out and they do yoga. And they are, the key with them is that they're gentle. A lot of people say, I'm so sensitive. But if you've ripped someone's head off in the last, 6 months, you're not in that category. Okay. You're one of the other ones that also has a little soft side of you. But they're the true, gentle souls in the world, and they teach us about love. That's their thing. But when they're in their non-resourceful state, they are what we call poor me's. They will feel totally overwhelmed. They'll drain you. They'll be like, they'll feel like they're not ever enough. And so they're always asking you to help them or be there for them, or, and they say things like love solves everything. Can't you just love me more? You don't love me enough. And then their favorite line is you made me feel so bad. And because they're always feeling bad about something. And when they're in their defense, but when they're in their core, they are the heart of the world. They are the ones that unconditionally love and realize that love does solve everything. But it's not the love you get from other people; it's the love you radiate. And so they understand that. So you've got those two people, and once again, the body type is very important. And when you're trying to figure out which of these you are, you also want to check out your body type. So then there's the next one are the team, what we call the team players. They are the people that are the caretakers. They're the ones who have got a big smile. They tend to be a little rounder type people. They tend to be really warm and people that you'd want to hug. So they've got, so they're sort of, big huggers. They're the ones that come into a party, and everybody in that party is going to get a hug from that person. They're happy, they're smiling, they're like, hey, come here, hey, how's it going? Oh, you're so fantastic. And their whole purpose in life is to make sure that you feel like your life is on track. And they make sure that it is. And if you have problems, they will jump in, they will drop whatever they're doing and help you. And that's their purpose in life. Each of these qualities has a purpose in life. And obviously the creative people are there to bring brilliant new ideas. That the emotional people are there to remind us that we all have hearts, and that it's important to care at the heart level. These people teach us that it's important to work together to do things, to get things done, and they will be the ones who volunteer to take their time to work with you to help you get what you want. And over time, they teach you the value of that. And if you're not a natural team player, which I was not, but I did work, and I always found great team players to work with, especially after I learned this work. I realized I need some team players on my staff. And when you get team players, when I can't be doing everything myself. And they actually teach you the value of people at a much deeper level than the other profiles are capable of even understanding it. And so they teach you that. But when they're in their non-resourceful state, and you may find if you're thinking maybe this is me or maybe that's my partner, they can get incredibly resentful that nobody does anything for them. And of course, when you ask them, can I do this for you? They say, no, I'm good. But then later on, they're like, yeah, but they should have done it. I'm always do that for them. I always help them out. I always this. And they feel like a doormat. And often I'll see speakers up on stage, women, I go to these different, power, business conferences, and they say, I'm a recovering doormat. And they really aren't. They were playing that on TV. That wasn't really their role. They weren't really team players, because if they're standing up on stage speaking, they're not a team player. Because team players are the ones that got you up on stage and made sure you had your papers and made sure you were ready. But they're not going to get up there and speak in front of people. So, but they are actually the ones that are treated like a doormat. They don't. In our culture, we treat people that don't have their own drive and purpose and independence as sort of second-rate citizens, and also all three of the lower three are the creative idealist, the emotional intelligence specialist, and the team players are looked at by the two strongest ones, the achievers and the leaders, as being sort of second-rate citizens, because they can't make a lot of money and start their own company and fight for what they want and those sort of things, because they're actually not. Their job is to teach us how to get along and how to be in the world in a smart way, rather than just succeed and drive. So those three are sort of the ones that are the more gentle of the and compassionate and non-confrontational of the profiles. Then we get into the two stronger ones, which are the achievers, which we call the knowledgeable achievers, and they are the ones who are internally driven. They hold themselves to they're perfectionists. They won't say they are. It's like, I'm not a perfectionist. I just do everything the right way. And they have this sort of sense of rightness. And they are very good athletes usually, because they will practice and they will discipline. They have internal discipline that's just out of this world. As small children, they knew how to clean their rooms up. They knew how to always dress in the right colors. They've always had an eye for the big picture. And they're people that are and people like that are just like, wow, that person's just together. They're never a mess. They've got a good job. They're making good money. That seems to be getting better every year. They keep things together. They're not overly emotional. They hold their emotions in, and so that they can perform well. They're generally very, very productive people in the world, and they can help you be productive too. They're great people to have on your staff if you're running a business, because they will get the job done and do it on time. And they're great managers for you, and leaders and COOs. They tend not to be the CEO. That's the leader. They will get in that position, but they won't be as good as because they're just not as willing to go for the jugular as a CEO would be. But they are great operation people, and they do that. But when they're in their defense, they are people that when they're in their sort of a non-resourceful state, they are incredibly self-critical and critical of you. We call them the rule keepers. They are the ones who are heartlessly driven by the rule. They have a checklist, and the individual doesn't make a lot of difference. It's the rule that counts. And so they will fire you without even there's not an emotion in it. It's just like, look, there's 6 things you had to be good at. You were only good at 4. I'm sorry, I have to let you go. And it's and that's when they're in their less resourceful state, because they don't see you as who you are as an individual. They see you as just your behavior. So that's the knowledgeable achiever when they're in their and for spiritual, on the spiritual side of each one of these, for the knowledgeable achiever, they're the sages. They are the person who become the gurus. They're the ones that you will actually go to, and they will see not only the big picture of the world, they'll see the whole universal picture when they really become enlightened. So they do have they've got a lot of chops when it comes to that level. That's sort of like the big picture level when they're in their core. And then finally, the most inspirational people are what we call the leaders, and they have the biggest energy, and they're born to lead. And they come into the world, and they're little children. They come out and they look up at the parents they have, or the hospital they're in, or the whatever it is, and their eyes open up, and the first thing that they think, if there's a thought that a baby doesn't really have a thought, but they have this awareness that somehow all of this is here to serve me, and then when they find out it's not, they'll have a tantrum about that. And they will be the children will have the most tantrums, the most, they will be the toughest to deal with, because they, by their nature, can't let the parent be the parent. They are going to want to be in charge of things. And you'll see sometimes you'll come into a restaurant or something, and you'll see, there'll be some parents will come in with a 2-year-old. And, and the 2-year-old is literally dictating everything that's about to happen at that table. And, and then it just gets worse from 3, 4, 5 years old. But they also, will also have battles with parents that are also charismatic leaders, that are these leaders, and they may become rebels. They'll do all sorts of things, but they are the people who have the most volatility, and the most charm. We call them the charismatic leader charmers. And they are charming. So some people say, well, I'm not really a leader. But then I ask them, well, how do you get your way in the world? Do you charm people into doing things? And do you ever not get your way? And then they smile and they realize, oh yeah, well, if I don't get my way, I don't play. And so I can either bully them into doing what I want to do, or convince them, or I'm a good negotiator. They're children who negotiate with you all the time, and adults who are constantly negotiating, or they will charm you and they will seduce you, and they tend to be they're the actresses and actors and politicians and all these people in public figures, radio DJs. They're people that have great voices and command of charisma and passion and feelings, so that they can sway you and get you thinking in a certain way. And of course, if they're in their core, they are trying to wake you up to your greatness. And if they're in their defense, they are trying to get you to follow their whatever their scam is that's going on. And so you'll see them in various different walks of life. They're in the paper for a lot of reasons. So they're in there for good reasons and bad reasons. So those, and people like that, and you kind of know that these are like 5 species of people. You don't get to be, it's not like you're like a team player one year and then all of a sudden you're a knowledgeable achiever the next year. You just aren't. These are like character, they're character qualities in people. And the character within people is a soul quality. And that's the difference between what I do, what I call the life purpose profiles, which there in the book there is there's a short test you can take to find out which one you are, and I've got longer tests, and I have a 3-year school to teach you how to really own it and live it. The idea of the life purpose profiles is that there's a quality within you that is innate. It's a soul quality is something that's unbendable and non-negotiable. You were born with it. It was stamped on your forehead, and you just have to go through life to discover, to recognize it in everything that you do. Some of the other great, fantastic profile assessment programs like the Enneagram or DISC or Myers-Briggs, fantastic ways of recognizing behavior, but they're behavior-based. And the problem with behavior-based assessments is that we're smart enough to actually live a lifetime, which I did, of being somebody that we aren't. And so when you take a behavior-based assessment and then you really do your work to discover who you are, you will often reinforce the person you think you are, not find out that you're actually been living a lie. And so that can be, to me, that can do more harm than good. So that was one of the reasons why I wrote the book, and I realized that so many people, that even people that I thought were spiritual and really understood themselves, and were still only getting the smallest piece of it, and that their true greatness was still hiding behind their trying to be this other type of person.
So part one in your book, you call that getting clear on your big why.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's the section that you actually outline the profile. I'm curious what you mean by getting clear on your big why, and then how does understanding what type you are, what your profile is, how does this help you progress in life?
Okay, so which one first?
Big why first.
Okay, big why first. So the big why, that Simon Sinek termed always. I think he had some videos out called "Begin with Why," and he was talking about business and how the most successful businesses have a very strong why, and the founder of the business, the why is literally their life purpose. It's who they are. It's who they're born to be, and they just embody that so purely. And then the business is formed around their deepest knowing of who and why they exist. And it isn't just a matter of sort of getting good business principles. It's a matter of that's who that person was, and that's why they could create that business. And then when someone else buys the business and tries to take it over, it never carries on the same way because the energy of that person was what created that business. And so the big why is really what Jung called the primary archetype. And he called the primary archetype the self. The problem is, and Eckhart Tolle, each of the great spiritual masters right now have referred to this self, the individuated self, these qualities, but nobody ever tells you what it is. They just tell you what it isn't. And you can't know who you are just by knowing what you aren't, which is when we get back to energy medicine techniques. Most energy medicine techniques deal with the fact that you have a pain, or you've got a problem, or you've got a psychological thing, or you've got this pattern in your life that keeps recurring, and there are ways to release that. But if you aren't aware of what's truly underneath that pattern that was the only safe place for you growing up and as a child and as an adult will eventually reemerge in another form. And so really your big why is understanding that underneath all of your behaviors is a driver. And that driver is one of these 5 qualities. And we all have all 5 of these qualities. Every one of you has some leadership quality. Everyone can achieve and get somewhere on time. Excuse me. And everybody cares about people at times. Everybody has a heart, and everybody can be creative. But each of us have one of those as that's like why we're here. And we know it. And we know in sort of a deep way that, like, yeah, when you talked about that, that's me for sure. And so that understanding that's your big why, is understanding that you need to find that foundational part of you that you were born as. And I think you had said earlier that we don't really know who we are, through our childhood, but we do when we're in our early childhood. And in the book, I also do an exercise in there called the Secret Place meditation. And I'm happy to do it with your people if you want, but I can just describe it. If you are to go back to your childhood and find some place that it was like your place that you went as a kid, and maybe between the ages of 4 and 7. I mean, it can be earlier, and it can also be into your teens. And it can be a beach. It can be like me, it was a tree. It was out on the dock at our summer home where I would fish, and I always imagined that I was going to catch a dolphin in the lake, and I just, like, for years I was just had this dream of I was going to catch flipper, and I had this, so you had these places that you would go, and I had a tree that I would always climb. And so think about that. And if you actually go into that place in your mind, you meditate and go into that place, you'll find that your energy body expands, and it actually feels fantastic. And yet it feels like nothing at all. So you lose the natural pressure that you have as an adult that comes from processing your life through your mind. And you start feeling this sort of like, I love that place. This is what I did. I played like this, and then I brought friends, and we did that, and you have that deep awareness. That's why I was saying at the very beginning, one of the essential pieces of empowerment is remembering that the child has to come first. The child energy, the pure life force energy of the child archetype within you, has to be the first thing that gets honored. And then you bring the child into the adult life rather than be a child as an adult, which a lot of people try to go back and be a child in their, they'll do inner child work, and I'm trying to be my child. It's like, no. The child's going to have a lot of fun as an adult too. You just play as an adult. So that inner quality within us, that natural expanded state, then usually when we go out of our secret place and back into our house, it gets compressed again. And it comes back, and then you realize this is what it feels like. This is what it's going to feel like when you're an adult, because the rules are more important than your truth. And your truth is what happens when you're in that playful place that you go and sort of had your own world, and then the laws and the rules of your family and of our society and of your town and of your country, those are all then pressures on you to conform in some way, and it limits that expanded energy field. And when your energy field stops, when you limit your energy field, you start getting sick. You start having more illnesses. You start having problems at school. You can't concentrate. There's all sorts of issues. Then of course, then we go to school and they tell you to sit up straight and don't talk and just think. Rather than actually real thinking is actually feeling, because nobody's ever figured out their life purpose in their brain. They can only do it through recognizing these qualities within them, these feelings within them that have this one of those five qualities. So that's the big why, is knowing that you have a purpose, that you're here, and it's not something that you will ever find in a job. You will bring it to every job you do, and there are some jobs that will lend themselves to your expressing that quality, but it's a quality within you that you were born with. You've always had it, and so that sort of creative dreamer that was fishing on the dock for the dolphin, and I had another one where I was in I had sort of a rocky knoll that I would go into that collected sticks and rocks and things and leaves, and I would sit in there for hours and hours and hours, and I would create superheroes. And I would put the sticks together and the leaves, and I'd be making superheroes, and this one burrows in the ground, and this one flies, and this one is invisible, and this one's got this, like this super trait of being super nice, and this one, and I was making up all these superheroes. And now I run a school where I have about 125 students come into the school each year, and all I do with them is pull out their superhero. And so what you were doing in that place is ultimately what your life purpose is. And will be. Your life purpose is to express that quality which makes you ultimately intimately happy with life, and keeps you healthy and makes you excited to get up every day. And it's not going to be a job or becoming an expert at something, which is just a mental activity. It's going to be, knowing that you've got this why inside of you that you feel, and you allow it to make your choices for you rather than this idea of who I should be. So that was answer to question number one. What was question two?
Oh, well, actually, I think that question two is listening to the answer to that. I think question two is pretty massive. It had to do with how this gets applied into your life. And I think there's a tremendous amount that goes into that, and a lot of different ways that it goes into that. All the way from a person, deciding what kind of a career path they're going to take.
Right.
Whether or not it's going to be tailored to what they know of themselves as their own personality type, of their own, profile. What would fit their profile and something that they think they could be happy. There's a lot of different.
A lot of different, and yet they're very basic. They're very basic and simple. I mean, the reality is that everybody wants to have a career they're proud of, where they make some decent money or make the money that they are comfortable with. They want to have better relationships usually in their lives, or have great relationships, and if they're in relationships with their clients, and have clients that are sort of what's coined the perfect customer, and they want to have great health, and you can't have any of the, I mean, you can have a great business, but it won't ever feel quite right if it doesn't serve that deeper quality. So for instance, if you're a creative idealist and you don't have a business that you, like mine, I'm a creative idealist. I've got this business that I literally can recreate the curriculum every year, and the students love it. It's like the more I create new stuff, the more they love it. It's like the perfect thing for me as a creative person to do that. If if I were in a job which I was in some way. I mean, I was able to teach. I was at a country club for years, but country clubs like things. They like the budget. They like it exactly the way it's supposed to be. And if you say this is how it's going to be, and I'm like, I was doing creative budgets. I was having fun with those things, and they're like, no, you cannot be doing that. That's not how it works. They were the rule keepers. So having a job like that ultimately isn't going to feed you, and it's going to make you sick if your job. Relationships. Let's pick another one. If you're an emotional intelligence specialist and you are picking relationships where you have to be the person that does everything, and you have to have lots of energy and take care of the family, and you're a woman in the family that that really wants to be sort of soft and gentle and quiet, and you've got 3 children who are yelling and screaming and running around. That's a very difficult job, and yet when that emotional intelligence specialist realizes that their specialty is working one-on-one, and helping each child individually with their homework or with things, they make great kindergarten teachers. They work great with the elderly. They are the ones who have this deep compassion for people, especially people who are who need help or are in that heart state. So children and elderly both have more open hearts, so they tend to gravitate more toward those types of people and supporting. So they will find things, and they make great therapists because they love to talk about your feelings, because they want to talk about their feelings too. And they will often be, some of the best therapists that have gone through my program are people that were emotional intelligence specialists as their primary, and then they also have some achiever in there, so they can stick to the rule and study and get their degrees. And then with health. So let's pick a different one. Let's say so the charismatic leader tends to be the one that will have this huge volatility, and they'll self-sabotage. They'll have a lot of addictive types of behaviors, things like that. And so when they don't have a mission in life, that they get up early and keeps them up late and makes them sort of need to be out in front of people and speaking and doing, being bigger than life, all that energy is going to go somewhere else. And so they will then do self-sabotage. They'll self-destruct. They'll overeat. They'll do a lot of things to sort of avoid the energy that's calling them to finding a mission. So what they do in the world, is also very directly related to how healthy they're going to be. So, and each one finding a way to feed themselves, and they love to be seen as in great shape, fantastic, gorgeous people, and and they love to be strong, so when they serve that, when what they're doing around their health serves them being even more charming and charismatic, that's a win-win for them. And so how they take care of their health has to do with how much they feel like they're being seen in the world. So each one of them has in those 3 areas, and everybody needs some sort of career, or even if it's a volunteer career. Career, relationships, and health are the 3 things that everyone needs, and you can't really get them if you think you're the wrong person. Because if that charismatic leader, for instance, thought that they were a team player, and never took time for themselves, and never, did anything, they would probably get very overweight and be very, powerfully controlling and live in their, not live in their core, and not be very healthy. So it's essential that each of us, for our lives, develop this awareness of who we are, because every choice we make comes down to, does it serve this quality. And in the book, I don't get into the chakras, but keep in mind that each of these profiles have a very specific set of chakras that are only and chakras are the law of attraction. All a chakra is a magnet, and all it ever does is magnetize to you 24 hours a day your life purpose. But if you're running that chakra trying to be somebody that you aren't, your life purpose still comes to you, and you don't recognize it. You may even reject it. You will reject it for sure. And so that, so that's what I teach in the school. We go beyond the profiles and teach you the energetics of it as well. But when you understand that your body can't work, even if you're good at it, and I was really good at being a knowledgeable achiever. I was very successful financially. I was speaking nationally in the tennis industry. I was, competitive in martial arts. It was all good. And I could have proven that I was a knowledgeable achiever 17 ways to Sunday. But behind the scenes, I was living sort of a kind of like a desperate kind of feeling like this isn't, no matter what I do, it's not really, there's really something big missing still.
Yeah. So we're getting ready to wrap up this first hour. But before we close on the first hour, I'd like to talk, in your book, Discover Your Purpose, I was looking at the questionnaire to discover your profile. So anybody who picks up the book, they can take this questionnaire and read through it and figure out, where they sit on these 5 profiles. But I also want to say, when I was reading through the check boxes, I would read a question and I would say, okay, now, how do I answer this question? Do I answer the question in the way that I do things, or do I answer the question in the way that I actually want to do things? How do I want to see myself being perceived by the world, or how I actually want to be? So I mean, when you're looking at these questions and reading them and answering them, only if you're being true to yourself. I mean, you can lie to anybody, but you really can't lie to yourself. So, looking through these questions, I'm thinking, okay, well, this is what I do, but this isn't really what I want to be doing. So, can you talk a little bit about your process of coming up with the questionnaire, and the importance of being true to yourself when you're answering these questions?
Yeah, and just by the way you pose that question, you've done enough personal process and personal growth work to recognize when you're lying to yourself. Some of the time, it's not. Yeah. I mean, none of us never catch. And it's often it's often the big lie that we just don't see at all. But yeah, you notice that there's 2 pieces. There's a part of you that what you really want, the lower self wants to just say, screw this, I'm out of here, whatever. And the higher self says, oh, well, this is we need to postpone our gratification, and we need to, stick with this because this is for the highest good of all people. And inside you're going, yeah, screw you, a higher self. What's the matter with you? And so then you have to sort of, yes, you have to answer the question from, and basically you do have to go back to your behaviors throughout your life, and you have to look at them and say, well, this is what I did mostly. This is how I would have answered this as a teenager, as a 20-year-old. You want to think about throughout your life, how would you have answered that question? And if you really, like me, had lived most of your life, I think I started about 8 years old. I decided that I was going to be that achiever, and I started playing tennis tournaments at 8 years old and doing, trying to be something that I wasn't. I would have picked a lot in that test, a lot of the knowledgeable achiever qualities. I would have also picked a lot of the creative idealist, and it might have even come out slightly skewed to who I'm sure I am. But what this assessment is, it's a short assessment that allows you to, one, check off all the boxes, and then go read, where does it tell you to go read? And then read about that quality that you see yourself as, because you're likely going to have one of your top 2 are going to be the person you most likely are. Unless you're a charismatic leader, then we'll talk about that in a second. They could come up as anything, because they're the actors and actresses, and they might be just playing a role that they're they're the method actors too, by the way, so they don't even know that they're doing it after a while. but what happens is then you go read the sections about you, and then and in the sections I'll say, and often, this will also look like this, and the knowledgeable achiever will often think that they are a creative idealist just because they think a lot. But the difference is this. The difference between a knowledgeable achiever, the way they think a lot and do stuff with it. They're constantly, their thoughts create stuff to do, and they do it, and it's successful. A creative idealist, on the other hand, has thoughts, and then they have more thoughts, and then they're like, wow, that was a great thought. I want to have another one of those. This is fantastic. What a great thought. Let me tell you about my thought. This is a freaking great thought. And they go with the thought. And that's what I love to do. But ultimately, you need a knowledgeable achiever in your life. I couldn't have written this book unless I got an editor that was a knowledgeable achiever that could take my all over thoughts and rein them in and say, we got to just finish this one book, then we'll write the next book. Don't write the next book now. We'll do this one first. And when you take the assessment, it's going to give you a pretty good look at who you are. And then after you read the section, you go back and then ask yourself, like, for instance, if you came out, really strong on the team player. So a lot of people, the two most commonly chosen, mentally chosen profiles are achieving, which would anybody who wants to be good at school or business. We're expected, if you're in a business coaching program, they don't want you to be anything other than a knowledgeable achiever, because knowledgeable achievers are good at following the rules and getting, doing exactly what you need to do to be successful. And so if you're not a knowledgeable achiever and you go into a coaching program, you're going to have a lot of problems with the fact that you don't naturally think that way. But knowledgeable achievers can often decide also that the other one. So knowledgeable achieving is one that we all try to be. That's what I wanted to be, because everybody likes a knowledgeable achiever. They do well. They're totally together. And people leave you alone because you got your shit together. Excuse me, they got your stuff together. And then the other one that's most common is the team player. So that, you grow up and if you're asked to help everybody out. It's like, if you're a good person, you help everybody out. You put family first. You do this. And so those will be behaviors that people will learn. But often, maybe, and let's just switch them back and forth. There are a lot of knowledgeable achievers that learn that the rule, because they live their life by rules, they learn that the rule is to be a really good person, you take care of other people. And so they behave in their life, they will answer, they'll look through all the questions and say, well, I do that for everybody, and I do this, I put myself second, I do this, blah, 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 and I do all these things. And then they'll also answer a lot of the knowledgeable achiever questions. I'm organized, I'm structured, I'm, that kind of thing. I'm very self-critical. But they will see themselves in the world as a team player because that's the rule of the knowledgeable achiever. When they go back and look at the questions and re-look at all the team player questions, they can then say, oh, the knowledgeable achiever in me really thinks then they'll see that some of those questions were really answered by the knowledgeable achiever. And they aren't actually team players, but they do those behaviors. And so you can sort of add that score up and improve that way. And then there also are team players that grow up that their parents want them to be successful and great at college, and the parent maybe was a doctor or whatever it was, and the child's like, okay, I guess I got to be a knowledgeable achiever, and they do everything they can to be a knowledgeable achiever, but really they're just warm and friendly and fun people that want to work for someone else. And so recognizing, first of all, that the test gives you a really good assessment of who you are. It'll definitely give you, these top two, and then you go read about those, and then you've got to test it, because there's lots of exercises in each of the sections about the profiles in the book, and then you come back to the profile assessment, and then you reread it, and you definitely want to reread those questions, because each question is written specifically to really call out one of the core qualities in each of the five. So the questions come in 5 questions, one of each of the profiles. You don't know which they are at the beginning, you just answer the questions, and you notice at the end that all the 5s really reflect the strong quality. And so if I know I'm a charismatic leader, you read all the I think it's number 5s of the charismatic leaders. Anyway, whatever it says, whatever's in there, and you go back in and you And you read all of those, and most of those should apply to you if you really have figured out your profile. And so the questionnaire is something that starts you off and gets you your first step into it, that says, it looks like I'm this and this and this. These are my top ones. I'm going to read about those first, and then I'm going to read about all of them. And then I'm going to come back to it, and after I learn about myself, and ask myself, is that really who I am, or is that just what I've done and behaved in my life? And a lot of times the test will get your right profile first, but the whole objective of the shorter profile assessment that's in this book is to really give you a starting point for reading about yourself.
Awesome. Sounds like you got all the bases covered there, and a good way for people to winnow out those hidden traits that can be on the surface.
Yeah.
Good
Yep.
stuff. So we are going to wrap up the first hour here, and we're going to take a short break. So if you would share for our listeners out there where they can pick up the book, and what have you got coming up in the near future?
If you go to get the book, go to discoveryourpurposebook.com. It's all one word, discoveryourpurposebook.com. And that's a website that you buy the book through us. You actually will click and you'll just actually buy it through Amazon. But when you go to the website, there are a whole bunch of bonuses that you get by buying it through the website. You can certainly just go to Amazon.com, and my book, we were number one in self-help happiness, which I was thrilled about, and self-help success. And so we're on Amazon. It's you'll be able to pick it up there. But if you go to discoveryourpurposebook.com, you'll be able to read about it on the page. But you'll also be able to there's some videos that I have on there. There's some keynote lecture. There's a lot of stuff on there that you'll get as bonuses when you do that way. If you want to find out about where I'm speaking, I'm doing some blab. Now I'm actually doing, I'm talking about the 4 legs of the program, coming up, this coming week. I'm starting one on Wednesday and then the following Wednesday. So I'm doing 2 of those because school is actually, the program that I run is actually starting in a couple of weeks. So if you want to find out more about how to totally own your purpose and live it, we have a year-long program that meets 5 times over the 5 weekends a year. We meet, and it's a total transformational program. So you can find out about all that sort of stuff at RhysThomasInstitute.com, and that's Rhys is RHYS, ThomasInstitute.com.
Good stuff, Rhys. Good stuff. Maybe we can get that meditation in hour 2. That would be awesome.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So if you're out there listening on one of the other media formats, the iTunes, the Vimos, the YouTubes, or wherever this audio lands, and you want to check out the second hour, pop on over to www.100monkeyradio, where you can check out 6 years worth of archives that we have stashed over there. And we will be back in hour 2 and continue this great conversation. Condemnation without investigation.
Change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change.
All the problems that divide the world are black and white. To end the racism, you know we've got to fight. So we must come together, make